He trusts in the Lord. Let the Lord deliver him. Let the Lord rescue him since he delights in him. That's also a passage that was said while Jesus was on the cross. Now, that wasn't said by Jesus. That was said by the Roman soldiers and by those that were onlookers at his crucifixion. And they were saying, he trusted in the Lord. He says, if he trusts him, let the Lord come down and deliver him. And so, even while on the even while on the cross, there were people still denying him to be the Son of God. They denied him being the Messiah because he did not prove to them that he could save himself by coming off the cross. But the mission of Christ was never to come off the cross. The mission of Christ was to die on the cross for the sins of humanity. And when people fail to understand the mission, then they start saying, well, why aren't you doing this, and why aren't you doing that, and why aren't you doing this, and why aren't you doing that? In our church, in our ministry, sometimes people ask, why aren't y'all doing this, why aren't y'all doing that? When you don't understand the mission or you don't understand what God sent you to do, then people will question, why aren't you doing A, B, C? Well, maybe God told me to do D, E, F.
Amen. All right.
Maybe he gave ABC to somebody else. So because a lot of times when people don't want to believe, they look for reasons not to believe. Whereas the saint and the child of God, we look for reasons to believe. Listen, any family, any home that don't have God as the leader is at risk of being out of divine order. Because if God is not the head, sometimes the man don't know how to be the head. Sometimes the woman take the headship from the man. Sometimes the children, I can tell when a home is not out of divine order, because when I hear people say my children come first, I'm saying you out of divine order. I know you out of divine. Even if you don't have a spouse, even if you're a single mother and you don't have a spouse, your children still shouldn't come first. God come first. Then you, then them. That's divine order. And if you're in a home as a man and you say, well, my children come first. No, you out of divine order. You got divine order. And I can say, anytime a home that is out of divine order, that don't have God as the leader of the home, it's an at-risk home. Matthew 27, verse 47. Says some of them that stood there, when they heard, they said, this man calleth for Elias. And straightway one of them ran and took a sponge and filled it with vinegar and put it on a reed and gave him to drink. That was supposed to numb the pain of the crucifixion, of the nails in his feet and his hand and the crown of thorns on his head. That was supposed to numb the pain. The rest said, let him alone. Let us see whether Elias will come to save him. They didn't even understand what he was crying out. Let's see if Elijah would come and save him. He was talking about being abandoned, and they was talking about Elijah the prophet. When God is not a participant in our life, we miss a whole lot of things, misunderstand a whole lot of stuff. Jesus, when he had cried again with a loud voice, yielded up the ghost. He died. But before he died, he felt abandoned. He felt abandoned. This Psalm, Psalm 22, is called Psalm of the Cross. And there's other passages that talks about how they cast lots for his garments and stuff like that, which is also in Psalm 22. But it was a psalm where Jesus quoted, as he was dying, about feeling abandoned, his human nature feeling abandoned on the cross by the Heavenly Father. And so, and then Matthew goes on and explains about, at that time, the veil of the temple was rent in half, and people got up out of their graves. All these miracles took place in the middle of darkness, in the middle of the day.